Hello, folks. This is actually Sunday. I'm getting the video ready for this week, so probably not a lot is going to change between now and then, so I feel pretty comfortable going ahead to record the ROP News and World Report. So Friday the 22nd update. Today's actually the 17th, like I said, but that's okay. We're going to roll with it. So for this week, what I did was go through the questions that you had turned in a week ago and went through the ones that were new, because some of the questions that were asked previously were asked again this week, and I didn't really think I wanted to answer the same ones over again. So obviously we're still in the thick of the pandemic and things are beginning to improve. Others are not improving. It really is regional. So in other words, especially in the state of Texas, we had some counties that were never affected by the pandemic, but they were on, shelter in place orders anyway because that was statewide. And so as we have begun to open up, the governor has let various counties decide to what degree they feel safe and comfortable with some guidelines from his office as to how they would recommend doing it, but leaving it up to the local entities, government entities, to decide how this is going to go. So the first question that I had was, does Harris County still lead in the number of cases? Well, let's think about the difference between Harris County and other counties in the state of Texas. Harris County has the highest population in the state of Texas with 4.6 million people. Dallas County is right behind Harris County with 2.6 million people. So if we look at the actual numbers, we had over 8,000, just over 8,000 cases confirmed so far in Harris County, with 179 people having died. So that means that we have a 0.17% infection rate in Harris County. And of the people who haven't been infected, been confirmed cases, 2.2% of those people have died. Okay? In Dallas County, where we have 2.6 million people, we have just over 6,000 confirmed cases with 145 deaths. Now, while that means there are fewer cases confirmed in Dallas County and fewer deaths, the infection rate is actually higher. It's 0.23% infection rate with a higher death rate as well. 2.4% of the people have died. So when you're asking who has the highest number of cases, the actual number of cases is higher in Harris County because they have more people. That would be expected. But the actual percentage of people who have been infected and the percentage of people who have died is lower in Harris County than it is in Dallas County. So we have had some things start to open back up, and someone asked a question about whether things got worse. Things didn't get worse, but we did have more cases being reported. But that is natural for that to happen because, number one, we're mixing populations again. So people who have not been exposed to it at all might now be, being exposed to it and becoming sick. But we're also having more testing done. So as we have more testing done, we're going to have more people show up as positive who may not even know that they ever had it. So the trend tends to be that it's leveling off with the number of people who are being reported each day, but the actual numbers will continue to go up until the number of people who are exposed and tested have all been reported, and then those numbers will start to trend back down. It's confusing to try to figure out statistically what's going on, but I think the fact that they're seeing fewer people admitted to the hospitals is a good sign that things are leveling off. How long before this goes away? Well, it's not going to go away, okay? It's just like any other virus, like measles or smallpox or the plague or rabies. Once it's here, and it's going to stay here. And what we do is look for some way to be protected from the virus. So we look for the development of a vaccine. And it looks like we've got so many people working on it around the world and in this country that it's probably going to be sooner rather than later that we have a vaccine. And how long before things return to normal? Well, as I said a minute ago, it depends on where you live. But you may end up leaving ROP going back to a very different world than you came from. Going out to eat, going out to shop, going to the movies, just going out has not been possible for a long time, and it is still not possible in some places. There are actually some states, not Texas, but some states that they say they are going to stay closed through the fall and perhaps until the end of the calendar year. This is just May, and they're talking about staying closed for another 7 months. I don't know how you can sustain an economy and keep a job and keep paying your bills and all of that if you're not going to work for 7 months, but maybe they live someplace that they can afford to do that. However, here in the South, people tend generally to be more optimistic anyway, but we are gradually moving back into an attitude and a position where we can open up and get back to some sense of normal as soon as possible. So we tend to focus on the positive rather than the negative. What are the symptoms? Well, I want you to look at these symptoms and tell me if you've ever experienced any of these. Coughing, shortness of breath or difficulty breathing, fever, chills, muscle pain, sore throat, a new loss of sense of taste or smell. So in other words, you notice that things don't taste the same or smell the same. These are the typical symptoms for any flu. A lot of times people get this when they have a cold. They don't necessarily go to the doctor for it. They just figure they've got a virus and they're going to, wait it out. In young children, same thing. Fever, runny nose, cough, fatigue, meaning they're tired all the time, muscle aches, vomiting, diarrhea. This is common in little kids who get it. So there aren't any specific symptoms that are unique to this particular virus because your body can only respond to illnesses in a general number of ways. So when you get sick, chances are you're just going to have the same symptoms. You just don't know what's causing it. And so right now with this pandemic and this particular virus going around, we want to make sure that if you do feel any of this coming on and you are running a fever, that we want to get you checked out to make sure that you aren't testing positive for that particular virus. STAR testing, somebody asked about that. Well, because the schools are out now officially, there is not going to be any STAR testing this year. If you're a graduating senior who needed to pass some of those tests, there's additional information that you'll need to get to see how that affects your graduation status. I don't have that. I don't know if Ms. Petty has that, but it would be available if you needed it. However, for everybody else who isn't a graduating senior, this means you're going to get some extra time to study up for next year because don't forget, you have to pass those STAR tests to graduate. And it won't matter that you had a year off, a free year. You'll just need to be sure you're ready. Are people able to go out to restaurants now? Well, again, that depends on city and state, and some states are still not allowing restaurants to be open at all. People can do drive-through, they can do delivery, but again, that's not everywhere. In Texas, and depending on the city, again, because it's the governor that's leaving it up to the decisions that are best for each city, some restaurants are wide open again, others are not, but if they are, typically they're seating people anywhere from 25 to 50% of their seating capacity because they're making sure that that there's a table and then there's an empty table and then there's a table with people and then an empty table, and they want to maintain the social distancing. Also, servers have to wear masks. I just went to Walmart the other day, and even though they've opened up Walmart, there are now additional precautions being taken. All of their employees are having to wear masks. They have the plastic shield in front of the cash register where you walk up and you're speaking through a plastic partition between you and the person who is waiting on you. It's very different. If you go to a restaurant, there are no menus on the table. You have to ask for the menus, and then they wipe them down after you're through with them to make sure if you have anything on your hands or if you coughed or sneezed on it or even just talked. And anytime you talk, you're releasing moisture along with sound, and that moisture could be carrying viral particles, and so they want to make sure that the menus are clean for the next person. There's no silverware on the tables. That's brought to you when your food arrives. There are no condiments, and condiments means things like ketchup, mustard, salt and pepper, steak sauce, any of the hot sauce. None of those things are on the table. They only come to you in packets, so you have to ask for them. You have to request them. Did the gas prices go back up when people started back to work? Well, yes, amazingly, they did start to go back up when people started going back to work and out to shop. The lowest, like I have on here on the screen, the lowest price that I saw prior to people going back to work was 93 cents a gallon. I had not seen gas prices like that in over 40 years. The same station where I saw 93 cents a gallon is now selling gas at $1.53 a gallon. So it's gone up 60 cents a gallon just in about 2 weeks. Keep in mind that this time of the year, summertime, is when most people experience the highest gas prices because they're going on vacations and they're traveling in their cars. But there may be, this summer, that may not be the case because a lot of people have been out of work. They probably have used whatever savings that they had for vacation. And so now they're going to be having to try to make up for lost wages during the summer. They may even be having to find jobs because their jobs no longer exist. A lot of people are waking up every day and finding out not only did they get laid off, the company they worked for has closed and is not going to open back up. And so a lot of people are going to have to be trying to figure out how to just make ends meet. So we're not going to worry too much about what gas prices do this summer. Is this a case of biological warfare? So this is an interesting question. There is evidence that the lab that was in Wuhan was one of those that could be developing biological weapons. We have labs like that in our country as well. And there is also evidence that this was not an accidental release of this virus, that they were testing it out and that it kind of got out of control. They were maybe testing it on their own people to see how fast it would spread. There's also evidence that they were slow to let the whole world know about this problem. And one of the reports that came out just this last week said that if they had just acknowledged that there was a problem 1 week earlier than they did, that it was estimated that 67% fewer people would have died in the United States. And so worldwide, that would have been a huge number. That would have been, 67% of 4 million people is a lot of people. In the United States, our death toll is nearly 90,000 at this point. So that means that we would have possibly been able to have prevent about 60,000 deaths if we had known about this at even just 1 week earlier. And right now, it appears that the Chinese are trying to hack into United States and other national research labs who are working on a vaccine because they want to know if we have one ready. And do we? Well, we don't know. We're getting close, I believe, to doing like round 2 testing. But we probably don't want to let them know too much, and we probably want to try to shut them out of as much spying as we can because, these are people who will play around with viruses, maybe, evidently, to figure out, how to make one that's pretty effective against people. Even if it's effective against their own people, they're going to use, they're going to use whatever information that they've gotten through this. So probably we don't want to play games with them and let them know what we're up to when it comes to getting a vaccine ready, because then that gives them an idea about how long it takes us to figure things out and then, develop a vaccine against anything that they might develop. So it's sad to say, but this may be a case of biological warfare. So let's change our topic here. I was asked about the 2020 census and what is it? Well, just so that you'll know, the census started in our country back in 1790. That was the first time we counted the official population of the United States. We won the war against England in 1776, and between then and 1790 we were busy setting up a government, figuring out how to run things. We created a new economy, new money, new counting system. We just did a lot of things. And so in 1790 we looked to see what was the population in the United States by state, and back then by territory, because we didn't have all of the states identified at that time. I mean, I think we had like 18 states by 1790. That number could be wrong, but we had a lot of territories where we had people living. And one of the reasons that we wanted to know about how many people were living in each state is because under our Constitution, each state has 2 senators. It doesn't matter how many people live there, every state has 2 senators that represent their state. But we also elect representatives, and the representatives are based on the population. So the greater the number of people in a state, the more representatives they have in the House of Representatives. So it's important for us to get accurate numbers every 10 years so that we can readjust the numbers of representatives, and we can redraw the lines that around the different areas or districts in each state, so that we can have a fair number of representatives. We also use those numbers to determine the need for federal funding for things like highways and schools and hospitals and clinics and other services that are funded by or we get federal funding for from the U.S. government. So we need to have accurate numbers. And so our last question for today's session is, who will be running for president this fall? And the answers are, for the Democratic Party candidate, although they've not had their convention yet, I'm pretty sure they're going to pick Joe Biden to run against the sitting president, who would be the Republican Party candidate, and that's Donald Trump. We don't ever take a sitting president out of office and put somebody else up on the candidate, up as a candidate, unless something, happens right at the last minute, like someone dies. And so since we don't expect that to happen, it looks like these are the two gentlemen who will be running against each other for president. This is probably the last live session I'm going to do, or recorded session I'm going to do, with regard to news for the next couple of weeks. I want to wait and see if we're going to be back on campus. I'm going to expect that we will be very shortly, and then I will be answering questions with you face to face. If that turns out not to be the case, then we'll go back to asking questions. And of course, if you have a question that you'd like to have answered, please let me know. But today, you didn't need to take any notes. You're going to be given a reprieve today. So it was just sit and listen. I hope you guys have a great weekend. Take care, and I'll look forward to seeing you soon. Bye-bye.